Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to Business Lines webinar on a very interesting and a very topical issue. This is about US immigration reset and what it means to India's tech firms and talent. To discuss this, I have very two eminent people. Uh, Avinash Vasista is the CEO of Tolans. I and Avinash have had a long association, close to now 3 decades. Avinash has been there in the industry and done that. He has worked with the likes of AT&T, Alcatel, Bell, Nortel Networks, and I think in the last job, quote unquote, he held, he was the chairman and managing director of Accenture India. He has been somebody who has seen the evolution and played a very important role in shaping how the Indian IT industry has become. Uh, Thank you, Avinash. Appreciate you joining this conversation. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
Second guest we have is Ashutosh Sharma, who is the VP and Research Director at Forrester. Ashutosh is also a veteran of the industry, having worked with Infosys, Cognizant, and Unisys in various capacities. And now, of course, he is one of the, with the heading the research for one of the most eminent research and forecast firms in the world. Ashutosh, thank you for your time and appreciate you joining this conversation.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you for having me.
Without much ado, let me start off by asking, all of us know what the Trump administration has done. We have been using this phrase of Indian IT industry having to reinvent. Is this the seminal moment when they have been pushed in a sense to, they have no choice now but to reinvent themselves? Avinash, why don't you go first and weigh in, and then Ashutosh could probably respond to the question too.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Venkatesh. In fact, if you look at it, the advent of AI, which kind of almost started a couple of years ago, has made a significant impact. And the model of essentially being able to, have resources provided to the clients at a certain rate card, per resource, is definitely obsolete right now, because the outcomes are not defined by how many people are deployed onto it. Outcomes are, first of all, defined by the journey that the client wants to reimagine. So very, very important. I think the concept of journeys has become extremely important. And so these journeys are defined, and which is a skill set that requires a little bit of these things, creative skills, by the way. And then the rest of the stuff is implemented through technology. So I think the entire game has changed from what it was 25 years ago. If you look at it in terms of, we have skilled people, there were set processes, and people were deployed to it. Now, people are talking about outcomes, and what kind of outcomes, what kind of experience, and then see what kind of technology and people are required for that. And so this change was critically required even when 2 years ago, but people didn't realize the impact of it. And I think what we have seen in the last 9 months is when clients have started using AI for not just automating the productivity task, like faster coding, a lot of processes in terms of content and things like that, but it has started to now infuse itself in the core of the business. So, for example, if a iron company, steel company, is spending a lot of money on melting iron, and the energy usage is significantly high, how can you use AI to decrease the cost of energy? And let's say if you decrease it by 15%, that's a very, very significant amount. And it is basically using AI at the core of the business. And this number is a direct number from one of the implementations by a large consulting firm for a client in Europe, by the way. And so these things are not doing. If the drug discovery, which takes 12 years, for example, can now be done, including clinical trials and everything, in 4 years, that's impacting the core of the business. And I think people have started now realizing those things in the last 9 months. And this requires a significant change in terms of how companies, IT companies, can be relevant to clients. And I think anytime things like that happen, what in the visa fees and things like that, that really makes it hits very home very hard. I think it's starting to hit home very hard because if you look at the IT companies, they have been on a path of very low growth, some way negative, some positive, but essentially a flat growth, if you may. And the even the market recognizes that, and the equities have not been doing very well. Doesn't matter whether it's in India and the US or some of these services companies. So I think the winners and survivors, I would say, would be the ones that are able to pivot themselves. This is not about improvement. I think this is about reinvention and a pivot.
Ashutosh, I thought that this labor arbitrage model disappeared in the late 90s and the early 2010s. But even now, the impression at least one gets is that Indian IT companies had become fat, lazy, and complacent, enjoying the fat margins which they were deriving till this entire tariffs came in, the H1B impact. Will this fundamentally upend the whole equation for Indian IT? Your perspective, please.
Sure. I mean, if you look at the margin performance of Indian IT services firms over last few years, you would probably find a different story. The margins have been continuously under pressure. If you look at pretty much everyone, they have been running margin improvement programs for last few years because they are used to margins in high 20s or mid 20s. But then over the last few years, we have seen a lot of pressure with some of the factors that Avinash alluded to around AI and AI related automation. And in general, automation has picked up. So there are certain parts of IT services journey, such as managed services, which have become sort of almost no margin, low margin, in some cases negative margin. So there are other services which tend to be of higher margin. For example, the discretionary spend or the projects that organizations employ these service providers for. Unfortunately, in last few quarters, I would say starting up to the calendar year 2024, we have, in fact, before that, we had seen a lull in that discretionary spend. We expected that spend to pick up in 2025, but then tariffs and now this visa situation has arisen. So we will see that growth return, but not in the near future. But in the absence of that growth, the margins will continue to remain under pressure. One of the things I would also like to mention here, building on what Avinash had mentioned, back in the day in 2010s, in early 2010s, late odds, we used to say that organizations, the service providers that is, should work on delinking revenue from the headcount. And there were a lot of efforts that were made by some of these organizations. So I wouldn't call them fat, lazy, and incompetent. There were a lot of product and platform related investments that these organizations made. There were some challenges with respect to how you make it happen. Some of it were by the fact that they did not have the right competency, and maybe they could have done more to invest. But there are a few bright spots as well. If you look at some of the large service providers, they have been able to build a bit of product and platform in a type business. So as they were building these new solutions to delink the revenue from headcount, the efforts were sort of yielding minimum results. But as of now, as of last couple of years, with the rise in AI and AI's ability to do work with fewer people and the ability to automate a significant part of the software development life cycle, in a way that delinking of revenue from headcount has been forced upon the industry. And that's why we are seeing a lot of managed services work getting automated away, clients asking or expecting a significant productivity improvement year over year that were not possible even a few years ago. And on the other hand, they're also a bit cautious with respect to the spend that they are incurring on the discretionary side. There are few factors, few green shoots that are starting to emerge, but that's for the later. But I wouldn't say that the service providers have been lazy. It's just that the existing business, of course, has been fairly good. But in last few years, we have already started to see that margin getting erased.
Just for a little bit of perspective to our listeners and viewers, the Indian IT industry is roughly about $285 billion, of which $225 billion is exports alone. Half of that exports go to the US market, and any impact which affects our US exports is going to have a deleterious effect on the entire industry. Apart from automation, Avinash, is local hiring and nearshoring the response to how Indian IT can address some of the current challenges?
Right. So I think first of all, let's try to go beyond just the visa fees and things like that. I mean, if you look at the in the world of AI, a lot of the task doesn't have to be done by human agents or human engineers. I mean, they can actually be automated if you look at it. But I think what AI world has done, and I again will go back to the fact about designing journeys and also seeing as to what kind of experience you want to deliver to your client, your consumer, etc. By the way, and that requires real-time collaboration, real-time collaboration, and for that reason, you need overlap of time zones. And so there has been a significant interest in the last 12 months for clients saying that we need to have a near time zone for our mix in terms of work. Majority of the work can go to India, but there's a certain part of it that needs to come, onshore. In fact, there are some clients who have told their, IT service providers that if you do not have a certain set of people, or if you do not have a presence for us in Latin America, we will not give you any additional work. So that pressure has come in, irrespective of everything that you see on the visa stuff, by the way. It is because of the AI and requiring real-time collaboration. That's one. I think the other thing is that the AI, a lot of the tasks can be done automated, but what really is required is the domain knowledge. And that domain knowledge is essentially there. And a lot of times the interaction with the client in the same time zone is how you kind of unlock that stuff. And that's the reason why there is also a certain pressure of hiring people with domain knowledge in the US itself, by the way, and near time zone. So I think if you look at Canada, if you look at the US, it's pretty much the same, really speaking. When you look at Latin America, people are obviously aware and a little bit more sensitive about the English speaking and things like that, which is a very, very important part of the communication. But I think once people start working with a certain population within Latin America, they realize that English speaking is pretty good in countries like Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica, Argentina. And so I think we are seeing, even the follow the sun model, which we normally talk about, is changing, and the mix of on-site, mix of nearshore, and the mix of offshore is coming in. And for example, for Eastern Europe, it is obviously the for Europe, it's the Eastern Europe as a thing, but we are also starting to see the emergence of Africa because of its huge labor force, which is very educated, which is very experienced, and is available at a very, very cost-effective price.
Let me do a little bit of segue, Ashutosh, in terms of what Avinash outlined. Will this result in greater M&A from the Indian IT players? Because if we have to make moves in nearshore, maybe they don't have the time to organically scale. Will we see, therefore, some aggressive M&A moves happening, especially from the larger players? Also, what about local hiring in the US? Do you see that a significant uptick happening? And what will be the impact on Indian IT talent?
If you look at in the context of the visa effect, the H-1B sort of going away as a vehicle or channel for bringing talent into the US, I believe there'll be multi-pronged effect. But I would put nearshore maybe at the pecking order number 3. The first one would be increase in offshoring, and I'll come to that as to why that will happen. Second would be a bit more on-site hire, local hire, domestic hire from different US population. Third would be nearshore and a combination of increase in GCCs, at least because that channel of providing talent into the parent organization is still at the moment not impacted. The reason why I'm saying offshore will increase, and this is where I have a slightly different opinion with respect to the capabilities of the organizations now versus say even 10 years ago. And we have been talking about domain being very, very important for providing services to certain industries in the US, be it retail, healthcare, financial services. The gap between the domain knowledge of people who are operating in the US and the talent that's available in India or elsewhere has diminished over the years, thanks to more homogenization of the industries with respect to their capabilities, with respect to the way they serve customers, with respect to the kind of processes that they follow, be it retail. If you look at the retail, some of those channels of retail were predominantly available in the US back in the day, but they are now very common and relevant and prevalent in other parts of the globe as well. Likewise, financial services industry, we evaluate these industries on a regular basis. And I can vouch for it that Indian financial services organizations are at par and in some cases better in terms of their process capabilities and abilities. Likewise, manufacturing, and you take sector after sector, telecom. India recently launched, for example, the BSNL so 4G stack. So there's the domain knowledge gap has diminished between different geographies. So while there are obviously certain clients who may insist on it, what we are finding, the growth of GCCs is another pointer to the fact that not just the traditional cost saving process support type of work which used to come back in the day, we are seeing more innovation, more complex transformation type of work coming to the India centers, and they are hiring and in some cases training as well as repurposing some of the talent that they are acquiring from this geography. So the talent availability, both from technical perspective as well as from the domain capability perspective, has improved quite a lot. And some of the talent which was poised to go to the US, say on H-1B visa, and this might, by the way, might have a second order and third order effect on some of the other channels of getting into the US as well, given the climate there. So you can expect more people to stay in India and elsewhere rather than going into the US on these. So this talent will be available offshore. Organizations are likely to capitalize on that because what it will also do, it will lead to a bit of a wage imbalance or or shifting wage balance rather between what was in the US and what's in say in India, because in US, with limiting the supply of talent into the country, they are and the fact that they have also asked the Department of Labor to raise the wage rates, we'll expect wage for the similar technology roles to rise in the US. Whereas if the supply increases in geographies such as India, we'll see the wage depression to some extent. So that will make offshore even more attractive in the long run. So I would expect nearshore would be probably the number 3. Like I said, offshore would be more prominent path for organizations to deliver projects. As far as time zone is concerned, that's a very valid point from Avinash with respect to some of the time zone capabilities are needed. But with the change in balance and the collaboration tools that have started to emerge and support project delivery and AI-based automation, some of those challenges will be mitigated with these efforts. So I would say more offshore, a little bit of on-site hiring, and then a little less of nearshore, and probably GCC will also be increasing compared to what we have seen in the past.
And to my earlier part of the question, Ashutosh, on acquisitions, will they get a boost?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I missed that part. So yes, acquisitions. I wouldn't say that there will be acquisitions with respect to nearshore firm as much as they would be around the acquisition of talent and capabilities such as AI. You can compare these years, 24, 25, 26, and maybe up to 27, 28 as well. These 4 or 5 years are very similar to what experience what we experienced during the early stages of digital era in 2013 to 2018. There were some leading firms such as IBM, Deloitte, Accenture, and later on Indian IT services providers also caught on to them. They acquired a number of digital firms, in some cases agencies, to strengthen their service offerings around the digital capabilities. Now we are reaching a stage where AI is sort of very, very similar, probably even more powerful. And AI capabilities are coming up in all parts of the globe with all types of organizations, and we are seeing some increase in or uptick in the acquisitions in that space. So providers probably will direct their acquisition dollars to acquire capabilities around AI and its ability to deliver services more so than they would say do around nearshore. In some cases, the two might overlap because you might find a very good organization in Latin America or Canada or Mexico for that matter, but that would be more of not by design but by happenstance. The focus will be more on AI-based capabilities.
Avinash, Ashutosh seems to be suggesting a contrarian bet that, if anything, the Trump tariffs could actually aid India's offshoring story, strengthen the offshoring capabilities we have. Do you think that will be the fallout after a brief, say, couple of years of impact? Offshoring, if anything, will increase disproportionately, because US doesn't produce the amount of STEM graduates required for the IT industry there, and eventually, they will have to find talent, and Indian companies are likely to benefit. What is your own perspective on that? That's A. And B, I also want you to weigh in on what you mentioned in your earlier response on follow the sun model. The worry there is, will some of the innovation be impacted because of this? Because if you look at typically in the follow the sun model, the American teams would work on something, hand over to their Indian counterparts for the next day for it to be carried. Will this kind of smooth rollout, which used to happen earlier, is that likely also to be impacted?
No, good. So many questions, and respect what Ashutosh was saying in terms of it may be good for India, but let's just make sure that if it's good for India, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for all IT services company. By the way, fine, because I think the point that you made was the fact that the talent is required for this talent that is really AI trainable in AI ready, if you may. And I think when we say AI trainable, AI ready, don't look at it as anything in rocket science, by the way. It is not. It's very simple. Technology has become extremely simple. And I think the biggest issue that we have today is the unlearnability of the experienced people, basically. So I think the people who are right now in terms of in the workforce, and so many people have so much of an experience, the question to ask is, how is that experience relevant to going forward? And in my belief, a majority of those people need to unlearn, not just from a technical perspective, but how they were to pitch businesses, how they were to kind of help their clients. And that unlearnability is the biggest drawback. I think it's very, very easy to learn, but unlearnability will be a big block. So that's one thing. The second thing is the skill set that was the industry was built 25 years ago is definitely not the skill set that's required going further, by the way. And when I say that, it is not just about programming skill sets. I think the programming has become much more easy with AI. So the skill set that are still required, are a little bit more of the soft skills. And also, I think domain, because when it's AI at the core, you need to have very extensive domain skill sets. And then also you have to have skill sets on the creativity in terms of taking a step much, much further in terms of how do you want to impact the experience of the consumer and client. So if you look at Accenture, it has been making acquisitions of media companies for the last 15 years. And look at the acquisition, a significant amount of their portfolio is media companies. In fact, Accenture has become one of the largest media companies in the world. There is $19 billion that is there from a division of Accenture called Accenture Song. And that's huge, by the way. So that is just one indication of what you need to have in terms of skills. The other thing is that today, and I think there was a mention also about the application portfolio, which is the bread and butter for the for the IT industry. If you look at it, I mean that is significantly changing. Ashutosh mentioned the fact that clients are expecting a significant improvement on that year over year, and that is true, by the way. And so the entire portfolio has to be transformed by what you call as AI first solution, which is basically means that there is a solution out there that someone has built, and you need to kind of use that to impact the portfolio of your client. The other thing is the AI native solution. That means it's a solution that you build yourself. And I think the word that you will keep hearing in the AI native is this concept of journey. Doesn't matter what you want to do, because you're not talking about the work that has to be done. You're talking about what is the outcome the client wants you to have, and what is the value you're driving, and that is basically defines a journey, and that journey is implemented in what these days we call as AI native solution, by the way. I think so. So the thing is that will India basically have an increase in business? The answer is yes. But when clients basically believe that they now know as to how to leverage the talent in India to do AI first and AI native stuff, by the way. And the amount of talent that's available in Latin America or Eastern Europe is nowhere large compared to what's there in India. I think the talent which is probably nascent right now is Africa, because Africa as a whole has equal amount of talent available. Obviously, they don't have the experience of being in this industry for the last 25 years, but that's a talent. And I think predictions basically show that in the next 10 years, majority of the workforce of the world will be in Africa. So again, as far as India's stuff is concerned, for the next decade, after a small blip, it is there. But the companies that do not pivot with this may not be the companies that you will see going further. So you will see some companies which are much smaller, which are new, that will probably be one of the top companies in IT consulting and services in the next 5 to 6 years.
Ashutosh, while both of you seem to be gung-ho about the long-term prospects of the industry, the worry has been, if you look at the track record over the last couple of years, the industry has been growing in low single digits. All of us here have been witness to when this industry used to grow in high teens. So have all the low-hanging fruit been plucked? And unless there is a drastic reinvention, we will not see the kind of growth rates which we witnessed in the past. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, at least in the near future, at least with the current way of doing things and the current model of doing things, we are going to see the growth that we used to see in that we saw in 2000 to 2010 timeframe. This new growth rate of single digit, low single digit to high single digit, depending on the size and the industry that the organization is working with, is here to stay for the foreseeable future. And I'm just going to add to some of the things that Avinash mentioned. I totally agree with him on the points around his the fact that the nearshore capability in other geographies is also limited, and in India, obviously, the organizations need to pivot, otherwise they'll just not become successful. We are also seeing some change from the clients in their ability and their desire to farm the work completely to a new geographies, basically India. So back in the day, we used to have clients keeping some requirement facing work and requirement collection type of client facing, user facing work within the US. And I'm just responding to the question that you had asked, and the team would hand over the requirements to India based team, and they'll develop, and that was the model that was followed. It's no longer the case. We are seeing teams in India, pods in India, agile scrum teams in India taking complete ownership of product development and delivery, right from user requirement elicitation and figuring out what exactly their stories would be. And they're doing it through various means and various capabilities that they have put together. It's be in terms of data and insights that they're generating through their client interaction, be it remote interaction with the client, in some cases even going and collecting that information. But the entire ownership, right from understanding what the requirements of the clients are all the way to developing and supporting, now is being delivered by the same team rather across multiple teams. So the model is shifting. There are some leading organizations, especially we are seeing more of it in the GCCs than in the large IT providers. So that model will ultimately get replicated in other cases, and clients will at some point in future will become comfortable with IT providers to do that as well. Will the IT services providers grow at the two-digit and higher two-digit growth again, even with the shifted model? No, it's still sort of an incremental shift. There has to be a very different way of doing things, a very different type of demand that they need to fulfill. AI was supposed to, or is supposed to, give a lot of generation of that kind of demand, but at the same time, AI is a great leveler. It sort of reduces the need for the people as well. So some of it will be done at a much higher productivity than ever before. But one thing about AI that many people might be familiar with is the Jevons paradox. As things become easier to do, you do more of them, not less of them, right? If you become more efficient with certain things, you actually end up doing more of it. So that sort of possibility still exists, with AI making software development, product development so much easy that we'll see more and more of that being developed. So that's likely to give more demand, but even then compensating for all of that automation gains and more demand, and the fact that more work may come to India on a more package basis, I would still not think that we are going to see the growth that we saw in 2010. Maybe in some organizations, just low double digits, 11-12%, but it will be less than that for the most part.
When you analyze the sector, do you see any companies investing aggressively in building IPs, platforms, deep industry expertise, some kind of a moat which will help them have a competitive edge out in the marketplace? Either one of you can weigh in on this, or both.
Yes, I think let me respond first, and then I'd love to hear Ashutosh. I think if you look at it right from the digital age, it was always the fact that you should find an innovative solution out there that really makes a significant difference, and then implement that. And on top of that, people used to automate with the RPA, for example, which was a simple replication of the human actions in that sense. But even then also, I think the innovative solution was very, very important right now. I think when we talk about the new AI world, the thing that you are talking about is AI first and AI native. Now, AI first is basically an innovative solution, by the way. It's an IP. Each and every AI first solution that you're using is an IP, by the way, but it's been developed by someone else. But when you do the AI native, that means you're developing that journey and that experience yourself for a client. And that gives you a significant ability to generate IP. So if you do 100 of those implementation, chances are 4 or 5 of them at least will say, be an IP. And so you will see a lot of these IT companies, or a lot of these successful IT companies, not, again, I can't say as to how these companies are going to pivot, by the way. It's not easy. But whoever is successful, you will see IP being generated, by the way. So the future IT consulting and services company is not a pure services company. They are also companies that are generating, IP. And when we hear about, for example, companies in the Valley, and I just heard about it yesterday, companies in the Valley who have come up with an amazing solution, which is kind of implements the entire stack of a company that I won't name the company right now, but in a company name stack of that services company, by the way, in terms of how it is done with AI journeys and things like that. So I think if you look at it, even CRM softwares, by the way, I mean, you like companies like Salesforce, if you see even, for example, ERPs like, SAP, by the way, you will start seeing a lot of these ERPs and solutions being done by startups. Obviously, SAP is an amazing software that applies across industries. But what you will find is people will come up with something similar that applies to a single industry, by the way. And so these solutions will come up right now, and a lot of IP is going to be generated. In fact, some of the large VC firms in the valley are saying that at one point there's a significant opportunity to invest in AI, but on the other hand, they do not know where to make the bet. It's very, very difficult to make the bet now. And so some of the VC firms are saying that we would love to actually invest in smaller IT firms who have clients, so that they have worked with the client and they would love to acquire them and then implement the solutions to the clients through an AI first and AI native. So in that sense, services company which were not the domain of investment of VCs may become a portfolio of investment for the VC firms, because they already have client work, and how can you use the AI to kind of change as to how to do it. So for example, the application, the ADM portfolio, which is a very, very big part of the IT industry, will go through a significant modernization. So among even the bigger IT firms, the companies that will be able to pivot the ADM modernization by use of automation, by use of AI first, by use of AI native, are the ones that are going to kind of keep that client. Because previously, if 20% of the clients were going for renewal as an RFP, now we believe that more than 80% of the clients will go for renewal through an RFP, and they will look for alternate solutions and alternate vendors.
Ashutosh, when Forrester scans the marketplace, what are the kind of players who are actually doing this, all the stuff which I mentioned, ring fencing some of their strengths by building IP, by building platforms, redeployable ones, and which are building deep industry expertise?
And I couldn't agree more on with Avinash on this one, that IP is the only way that you can differentiate, that you can do or stay or survive in this industry. But I would also say that only organization that has, in today's age and today's times, that has a bit of a moat, and we don't know whether that moat will last for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, is NVIDIA. Besides NVIDIA, even the foundational model firms, be it OpenAI or Grok or Google or whoever, they just don't have that much of a moat. They are all building more aggressive, more advanced models, at least for the foreseeable future, by throwing more computing capacity at it. But they all sort of have become fairly capable. Outside of that, if you come to the service providers, right now with the pace at which things are evolving, having a differentiated ring-fenced capability is at the moment more of a dream rather than a reality. But I would say, to their credit, they all are building at least some capabilities, and they're investing aggressively on IP-based solutions to deliver not just the client solutions, but also automating their own operations through which they can deliver it more effectively. And those sort of investments are pretty much across the board. If you look at any service provider, what they solve, they have done significant investments in making that sort of IP. Is that IP differentiating at the moment? I wouldn't say yes, because this is probably will give them a leg up for a few weeks, maybe a month or a quarter at best, before a competitor catches up and they have a very similar sort of solution and offering available in this space. So and the reason is it's not that easy. It's actually a very hard problem. And again, Avinash alluded to it, that it's not easy for any organization to build IP and stay ahead and have a moat which will give them some bit of separation from the competition for a foreseeable future. The pace at which AI is moving and the technology is evolving as a result of AI's enablement, I would say we're going to stay in this sort of catching up, jumping ahead, but then competition catching up, and then that sort of a cat and mouse game, at least for the foreseeable future, irrespective of whether you're a service provider, whether you're a tech provider, or whether you're anyone else. Only other way that providers can probably make some bit of difference, and some of them are already doing that as well, is by partnering with various providers of tech in the ecosystem, and it's different from what used to happen in the past. Back in the day, you would see one service provider entering into some partnership with maybe a cloud service provider on one hand, or maybe with some ISV or some ERP solution providers such as SAP and Oracle or anyone else on the other hand, and those were sort of one-to-one sort of relationship. But we believe as we go forward, we'll see more full stack partnership coming together, right from the infra layer, be it NVIDIA or whatever else, all the way up to the cloud and the application and agents through multiple providers to come up with more differentiating solutions. And that's the difference that we'll see more of in going for in the future. But then, like I said, the competition is such that moment someone does it, others are bound to follow very, very quickly. So in a way, what I'm probably alluding to is this industry for the foreseeable future is going to be very, very undifferentiated. Not that it wasn't. There were few providers who were at least able to differentiate for a foreseeable future on the back of some platform that they had built. But with the speed at which things are moving, it's very, very hard to be differentiating.
This ability to invest and separate themselves apart from the competition, at least to some extent, will this have an impact, especially on mid-tier IT services providers? Will we see, therefore, a greater impact on the mid-tier players and a separation and a gulf emerging between the larger players and the small and mid-tier ones?
So if the question is for me, I'm going to maybe take a quick shot at it. Mid-tier has, they also, by the way, have access to similar sort of technology capabilities, similar sort of technology partners whom they can work with. But the way they differentiate typically is by the fact that they are much more agile, much more nimble, and culturally they are able to work with clients much more flexibly than their large counterparts. And that has always been the case. That will also remain the case. And clients sometimes, in many cases rather, are more comfortable working with mid-tier because they can shape that engagement depending on how their direction evolves. So that's going to be one. If you look at in the broader context of the topic today around the US immigration, I would say mid-tiers, to be honest, are in a bit of a bother there because they tend to have a higher proportion of people-based delivery, people-centric delivery rather than solution-centric delivery. And that dependency is likely to put their ability of serving clients, especially in North America, at risk, because if one of the key channels through which they bring people, even if it's a small number, but the percentage of their revenue could be high, it's likely to impact them because they also rely on these people, client-facing people, to stay in the account, to build on and grow those accounts. So that's the ability that's likely to get impacted. But the differentiation will still come from their agility, their nimbleness, flexibility, and ability to work with clients on their terms.
Avinash, $100,000 for a H1B. How many of these companies, even for the large ones, given while they have reduced the amount of H1Bs they were using in the past, do you think that this is sustainable at all, even at the current numbers? And especially what I asked about mid-tier firms, therefore having a disproportionately bigger hit compared to the larger players.
Yeah, so I think if you look at it, 100,000 over 3 years, for example, is 30 to 35% higher cost of the input, if you may. And normally, as Ashutosh was saying, mid-tier firms, they have a higher percentage of people onshore, and the dependence on them is significant versus the larger companies. And larger companies actually have the ability to kind of hire people from onshore itself, and they don't necessarily have to take people on visas so much as the small, mid-tier companies. And so I think if you look at it, the cost for the mid-tier companies are definitely going to rise a lot more versus the top ones. And I think if you look at the impact that it may create, it may put a 4 to 8% margin pressure, by the way, margin pressure, as much as 4 to 8% on margin pressure. And some of this margin pressure is going to be challenging for the mid-tier firms, and the bigger firms will be able to absorb it. But at the same time, that is going to impact their margin expectations. So, the companies that were making high in 20s, will definitely have that 4% impact, could have a 4% impact on the margin. But if you look at it, this is on the on-site stuff. And, the on-site stuff is normally not more than 15% of the entire group. And if you look at the 15% also, it is only about a 30% to 35% jump on the H1 and B. So in that sense, if you look at it, that's why the margins of 4 to 8% come in, by the way. And what this will do definitely is motivate motivate the Indian companies, especially who have a large portion on its H1B visas, to really see countries like Canada, for example, because Canadians don't require any visa like this thing. If they are Canadian citizens, they can just come in and work in the US itself. So I think the use of Canadian resources, which really speaking are no more expensive than H1Bs, is going to be a pretty attractive option for them.
Not just Canada, even countries like China, UK have announced special visa schemes, or at least being considered to attract this kind of investments and global talent. Do you see actually that fructifying, Ashutosh? But US continues to remain 50% of our export market. So is this right now just some gimmicky announcements by those respective governments and would take time to play out, or will it have an impact in the near future?
Hard to say, to be honest, Venkatesh, because I really don't know how many people would be interested in going to China, especially from India. There could be some other parts of the globe which are also impacted by the way this H1B is applicable to everyone across the globe. So there could be some individuals from different parts of the globe who could be interested in going to China. UK happens to be as expensive for anyone as US, or probably more. So I'm not an expert about UK immigration also, so I'm not sure how many people will take that up. But one thing is for sure, H1B fees of $100,000, even if it's for the application, not year over year, is likely not to be paid by anyone. And that means that talent is likely to stay in whatever geography they are in, and they'll probably look for other opportunities as they come. I'm not at all sure how attractive China would be as an option, even though China, by the way, has made significant advancements in technology, be it the competitor to NVIDIA chips, or drones, or automation, or AI of any kind. So from a technology maturity and learning and perspective, it's a great place. But obviously, China has some other challenges which may not be attractive to many people. So really don't know on a balance how it's going to play out.
So
I think on the China, Ashutosh, if you look at it, we've been involved in this outsourcing stuff from the day it was born 30 years ago, and we have worked with pretty much all the Chinese, IT companies, and tried hard in terms of creating a market for China in the US, etc. Very, very difficult. And I think the biggest issue with China is the fact that China does technology for China consumption, if you look at it. They don't really collaborate. They don't allow technology from outside to come in that sense. So in fact, China, according to us, because we have historically also been an advisory firm and a research firm as well, to an extent related to the outsourcing stuff. I think we don't really believe that China is relevant to this game of globalization. So in fact, when we do our studies on countries and cities, we discontinued coverage of China, probably about 10 years ago in that sense, because it's not really relevant in that sense. In terms of the UK, etc., so I do not understand as to how the UK doing all this is really going to help. Because if 50%, more than 50% of the work is out of the US, it is out of the US, simple, fine. And so you have to address the client in the US, and whether you're addressing it from US versus any place outside is the issue. So I do not know how the UK is going to play into this issue that we are seeing and the challenge that we are seeing. I think the companies are advised basically to make sure that they are able to invest money into being more AI first and AI native. That's one thing. The other thing is they're advised to really look at having some presence near shore in a place like LATAM, fine, and also kind of use their ability to skill people in the US itself. I think the thing is that technology skills is not necessarily the most important skill right now. Okay, and there are lots of other skills that have to be kind of people have to be trained on as to how do you use AI, and that skill is easy to be trained on resources that do not come up with a baggage. I think the investment in the US will go a long way in terms of training people rather than trying to kind of see as to how what are the alternatives to the H1B.
That's very interesting. We are accustomed to looking at software as a service model, the typical SaaS model. There have been some suggestions about service as a software, the other kind of SaaS, wherein agentic AI, LLMs, vibe coding, if it is possible to turn this kind of repeatable workflow into intelligent service products with defined inputs, say clearly defined SLAs and outcome-based pricing. Is that a model which is workable, Ashutosh, in your perspective? And service as a kind of a fixed software kind of a model wherein outcome-based pricing would help players scale.
Yes, that's the direction we see some of this emerging, and it's something. It's an idea, by the way. An analyst mooted way back in 2010. Forrest analyst, he talked about service as a software, and the idea is that you can have software be able to deliver some of these things which humans have been doing, and in the absence of, or rather, with the advent of AI and its ability to do things which humans do with much more accuracy at much higher speed and much more capability, you can see why there is an appeal towards it. However, to make that happen, you have to completely reimagine the business processes. You have to completely reimagine the way you have been designing systems and running and supporting and enabling your business processes. And that's a hard problem for anyone to solve. There's this organization out in Europe which tried it, and then they had to revert old model. So it's ideas. However, this is being developed, and as we see more and more organizations building agents, in fact, now clients are also asking service providers when they are outsourcing any of the process support around, say, HR or F&A or similar functions. They're asking how many agents you're putting in the system to support this kind of work, and are you really putting agents, or you're looking at some traditional way of cutting down the cost through efficiency improvement, productivity gains, automation, things like that. So there's a desire, there's a possibility, there's a direction. However, it's early days when it comes to services software. Maybe we'll see this coming up more strongly in next 3 to 5 years.
Avinash, two things. One, your comments on this service as a software model, 1A. B, you worked extensively in the Bay Area and in the US markets, apart from having been a pioneer in some of the offshoring work which you have done over the last 3 decades. The current administration still has a 3+ year kind of a lifespan. Would any kind of shift, say even 3 years down the line, do Indian IT services companies have that kind of ramp to wait out the current administration, or is it something that they need to do it here and now, irrespective of a possible change in policies, administration? None of us know which direction this is headed, especially in the current administration, where probably decisions are taken on the fly on a daily basis. And when posts on Truth Social appear, all of us wake up to differing facts. So what is your viewpoint? First on the services as a software kind of a model.
Right. No, so I think let me just address that first of all, service, and then we'll come into the administration stuff. So I think the way I look at it is the services will be delivered by agents, if you may, which is software, right? And so that is something that is becoming a norm now. In fact, and I'm pretty sure other companies are doing it, but for example, in Tholons, we have told people that if they are not using a AI augmentation to what they're doing, they should stop work, basically, and really take help from someone within Tholons in terms of how we can build software and how we can build agents, by the way, to do what we were doing, by the way. And it is about not just doing exactly the same, doing it in a way that it will give you a much better experience, by the way. So I think the debate about whether the software will deliver the service in the future is probably an irrelevant debate in my view. It is being done today. It will be done exactly this way. I mean, we will not basically be looking at just human beings delivering the service. And yes, they will deliver service, but there will be so much of an augmentation that the service that you see today through people will all be coming through software. And you will get, and I think Ashutosh mentioned the fact that, just because you do something, it doesn't mean that the work gets reduced. It's just that certain things get automated, but you're doing 10 times more maybe right now with the same number of people in that sense. And I think this is exactly what will happen. And you will get amazing service, and the service in 5 years' time will be unbelievable. But forget about what we do today. All of that stuff will be done by software, but there'll be a lot more being done, by the way. So this is the model to go. And if the IT consulting and services companies do not adopt the that software is going to deliver service model as soon as possible, I think they will have significant challenges if they're going to wait out even for 2-3 years. Now let me get to the administration stuff. I think all these things that are happening happen as jerks, by the way. I mean, these things that just happen overnight. I mean, I remember when this 100,000 was announced, and even firms like Microsoft and others basically asked their people to come back, from their trips to India and things like that. And there was literally a rush, and I mean, a true rush at the airports for coming back. And the clarifications came in saying that, no, it is only for the new stuff and not for the existing stuff. And then clarifications came in that it is over 3 years and so on and so forth. So there's what doesn't matter what it is, but this is a jerk. Now, is this something which has a long-term impact? Not really. This is something that will become really irrelevant in my view, based on where many more things are going. So when we have things which are, software is becoming service, by the way, and delivering servicing, the people that you're bringing in have to be a different set of people, by the way, that come in. So in my view, this will accelerate what the companies have to do to pivot to the new world. And obviously, since these things are coming in very abruptly and without much prep, it's causing a lot of pain and heartache to people. But this in my view is all going to kind of eventually, all the jerks will probably happen in the next 3 years. But there is nothing pretty much out here that will be rolled back, in my view. I mean, for example, rolling back the 100,000 fees is quite possible, by the way, because really speaking, there are lots of things that are happening which are barriers to free trade, if you may. And maybe there is a need right now to balance the trade. And again, I know this is not my part of the business, but there are certain things that I agree that there has to be a balance of trade. But in the 3 years' time, I think enough would have been done, and there will definitely be some rollbacks, in the new administration that will provide for a more equitable balance of trade.
Ashutosh, we have a few viewer and reader questions. Chinmay Gupta says that what if the hire bill becomes a reality? Would we be then taxed on outsourced work that enters the US?
Yeah, that's an uncertainty at the moment. Hire bill, the way it's proposed in its current form, will tax any outsourcing by 25% or so, or whatever rate that may choose to decide. But it's at the proposal stage. From probability perspective, it has at the moment lower probability of getting approved because there's a lot of opposition within various quarters within the US for it to happen. However, if it does, then yes, there will be a certain amount of tax. We don't know whether it will be 25%, 15%, 5%, 50%. But then other thing about that bill is it's homogeneous across, at least that's or the housing happening to India or to some nearshore location or to Europe or other part, it's the same tax. Will that change? Then obviously there will be some repercussion with respect to taxing services. So we'll probably not go into the conjectures here and try to figure out what's already not there. My only submission here is that it has slightly low possibility, and if it does get approved, then yes, there will be some bit of tax.
That's interesting. Avinash, there is a question for you from Michael Jabraj. He asked, bearing in mind this visa changes and any other curveballs that the Trump administration might throw, what kind of resources and skill sets do you see US clients wanting to still outsource and hire vis-a-vis keeping them in-house?
Yeah, so I think if you look at it, I'll again continue to go with the fact that outcome based is very, very important, and I think clients will be looking for AI first solution and AI native solution. So I think if you were to look at it as what is required in this skill sets is what's going to be outsourced to India. And I think when we say that thing is, for example, if you look at the front-end developers, they will definitely be a big, stuff that will actually be outsourced. But again, if you look at certain things, softwares that are there on the market like Replit and things like that, which help you do that stuff. But that only help you to do it because you have some inputs to that about how you can reimagine something. So their knowledge of the consumer, domain knowledge, and is going to be important. And I think some bit of creativity is going to be important. And so that is one skill set. The other one is the fact that data, the intimacy with data. So I think people who are very, very good data engineers will be there, because you can have a lot of the coding automated and things like that, but the interplay of data and how do you build certain models on analytics where you have to have certain biases towards it to get the right results and so on and so forth. I think that stuff is also very much required. The other thing is the cyber security. I mean, it is going to become even more important with a lot of these things being done by software, by the way. So the cyber security is going to become 10 times as much important than it was in the past. So cyber security is another area that I think will have. And also, I think look at some industry specific skills. What does that industry require? So for example, right now the semiconductor industry is a big industry. And I think healthcare has always been there. The mobility industry, be it drones, be it electric vehicles and those kind of things, So I think depending on what these industries require, I think some of this skill set that will be required will be out there. Manufacturing is an industry that hasn't really seen much, but I think from this AI world, they are the ones that can benefit very significantly, by the way. So a lot of work out there. So if you see right now, the smaller mid-sized companies that actually have a larger portfolio of engineering services, even in India, are doing extremely well in that sense. I think so that just a forward indicator of what kind of skills clients will continue to send to India.
I just have enough time for just two brief questions and would really appreciate short answers to this. Ashutosh, if you can respond to Vijay Singh Adhikari asking us, is India looking at other countries that have the ability to replace US? All of us know half of our exports go to the US. Are there any other large, either less tapped or untapped markets which Indian guys could explore?
Is one we would have already explored, and we would have already started exporting them because Indian IT services firms are very interested. Yes, we are always looking for grow elsewhere, but currently there are not that many alternatives.
And Avinash, there is an interesting question from Vamshi, K. Vamshi, who is a reader of ours. He asked, what about project managers, on-site coordinators, client engagement managers, and other non-technical roles who remain onshore on H-1B? What about their future? What kind of an impact will it have?
Yeah, so again, that's a very good question. And I think they should be very, very concerned about kind of pivoting themselves, by the way, because the years of experience is not relevant in terms of what we have today. I think the soft skills about how do you interact with the client, how do you collect the requirements, how are you able to replay with the client in terms of what are some of the possibilities that you can do. I think some of those skill sets are extremely important. I think so. Anyone who has been a very strong client-oriented person, a person who has the ability to listen, has ability to connect very well with clients, are going to be very, very essential, and they can pivot. But people who are focusing more on selling rate card services and essentially negotiating contracts and things like that, and the typical way of selling without pivoting themselves into the new product line, I think are going to face a lot of challenges. So for us in Tholons, we have taken a very, very significant relook at it. In fact, for example, if you're getting into the semiconductor industry, for someone like that, we would rather go and find someone from the semiconductor industry, from the manufacturing stuff, who deals with IT vendors, by the way, rather than basically hiring someone from the IT industry itself.
I'm absolutely out of time, but since we haven't taken a question from any woman, one final question from Asha Rajiv, who asks, will the US economy also not be impacted because of all these bills? Is it only Indian IT which is likely to get impacted? Ashutosh, your perspective.
See, yes, there's a prevailing view that if you look back at the US economy and its history, there's a significant contribution that has come from immigrants that have come to the country and contributed to growth and technology development and advancements. So yes, on a long-term basis, if they continue on this path, if the trade becomes restrictive, and it's just not true of US, it's pretty much true of all economies. If you close the doors and if you limit interaction with the outside world, it does impact your economy, and that's all I can say at the moment. I don't know
Thanks,
if we can do
gentlemen.
very well. There are enough proof points in the world history to kind of allude to that. Yeah.
Thanks, gentlemen. We are completely out of time. Thanks for this very insightful conversation chat. The reason why we spend so much time on this issue is, let's be clear, IT industry is about 9 to 10% of India's GDP, directly employs about 5.5 million people, most of them white-collar workers, several multiples of that in terms of workforce engagement. So it's a very key critical industry for the country's progress. So any impact on this would also have an impact on all of us. Thank you for being with us. Thanks, Avinash, for your time. Ashutosh, it's been a pleasure having you. Thanks to your time, both of you gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Pleasure.
Thank you.